Hey, Milana.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Hey.
Hey, Stephen.
Hey.
So,
I promise we did not coordinate the colors today, it looks like.
yeah, very nice. Good job,
Oh,
guys.
we did. Don't lie.
Oh, come
on. This topic has been coming up every chat so far. It just, obviously, they were just talking about it, is basically all of the options and lending against catalogs, tax changes coming up. So I'm sure that you two will touch on that. So I'll kind of turn it over to you, maybe to you, Stephen, because I know that you have a nice intro of Milana. Yeah, just let you guys take it away.
Yeah, I have to say it was probably one of like the easiest intros because she's done so much in such a short amount of time. And I know you're super humble, so like I have to introduce you if that's okay. But everybody here, I'm sure you know, Milana is the co-founder and CEO of STEM. Music really runs through her blood. It's part of her identity. You know, she grew up in a family that was full of musicians, similar to me, which is amazing. She's not just an entrepreneur, but she really is a champion for creators. She started at the mailroom over at Endeavor, became the first digital talent agent or digital media agent representing a range of creators over at UTA, really developing new ways for creators to distribute and monetize their content. And during that time, it's when she really realized that the music industry was a little broken and needed some more efficiency. So from there, she decided to launch STEM, which we're here to talk about today, which is an incredible platform. And also, I have to mention that she has been featured in Forbes, Inc. magazine, and Refinery 29 as part of their 30 under 30 list, and also Hollywood's new leaders over at Variety. So I feel like you have many more accomplishments coming your way. But Milana, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually really excited to talk to the community of business managers because I think that kind of like what was just said in the previous panel, you guys often are in the background, but I see you as like one of the most critical parts of an artist business. Being an entrepreneur and founder myself, I am in excruciating pain without a CFO and a strong finance person next to me. So I think what you guys do is beyond instrumental and quite frankly, something that we want to help supercharge for you.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, really, the business manager is the core of it, but oftentimes they are thought of behind the scenes. So I'm so glad that we're here today, obviously, connecting with them, which is wonderful. And having the honor of working with many of them is really great. So for those business managers that aren't really familiar with STEM, though, do you mind giving us kind of a quick background of, you know, why you launched STEM, what you do?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to take it back to my days at UTA when I was one of the early digital media agents, because back then I was working with clients across the spectrum from filmmakers to TV stars to comedians, but my core talent base that I was signing and representing were YouTube stars and digital creators and what we now call influencers. And this is around 2010 that I started my job. So between 2010 to 2013, I sort of started realizing that the revenue opportunities in digital were actually pretty massive. And yet there was no infrastructure to support digital content creators or established stars when they wanted to do things in digital. And, you know, I think you guys talked about this yourselves, those who were on the panels, how, you know, you guys were just starting to really start working with digital creators. And so a lot of my clients that were making a lot of money in 2013, 14, didn't have business managers. And so for them, the very simple pain point of, I'm producing content consistently, whether it's video or music, putting it out independently, whether it's directly on YouTube or platforms like SoundCloud, or using independent distributors to get to all the major DSPs. I'm making money, but then I have to pay other people. And so how do I do that in a more automated way? And I, being in sort of like the tech world, looked at what platforms like Venmo and Square and other technologies like Stripe and others had created to enable digital businesses, primarily in the e-commerce space or other services. And I thought to myself, well, why doesn't anyone who works in the entertainment industry have access to something like this? And really, there were two big aha moments for me when I was at UTA. One was when a huge independent country act came and called us and said, hey, I need a really good piece of software to aggregate all my royalties and revenues in one place and make it easy for me to account for my producers or songwriters and other people. What can I use? And the only system really that existed back then was Counterpoint. But Counterpoint was so, I mean, you guys know you have to be professional to use it. It's not the simplest tool to use. And it's definitely not something that a manager on behalf of a huge artist is going to use. And I just felt like, well, why isn't there an app for that? And then the second one, aha moment, was when a couple of my big YouTube stars put music out there independently. And we would release it through TuneCore or CD Baby, and the money would come into the artist account. But then the parents would call me and say, well, I have to pay the producers and songwriters. How do I do that? We agreed to give them a piece of the master royalty because everyone's independent. Is there an app for that? And that sort of led me to this journey to trying to see if there was an app for that, and there wasn't. And that was the initial concept for STEM. So when we came to market in 2016, we launched the first distribution business that was tied to a payout processing platform. So when you put records out through STEM, we asked for not only the master splits, but also the publishing splits, because as we collect the money from the various DSPs, both on the streaming side and on the download side, the distributor gets paid the mechanical royalty. And that calculation is something that's a huge pain in the ass. I mean, you guys deal with it and you know what I'm talking about. But we wanted to build a platform that automated all of that logic that was as simple as first getting the splits up front. So forcing people to have those conversations and try to do before music comes out. Two, making sure we can confirm it. So it's on a consensus model. So if 3 people collaborate, each person gets invited to STEM to click and approve splits, and then they have access to the dashboard where on the master side, they can see all of the revenue coming through and get paid directly. On the publishing and mechanical side, it's slightly of a different workflow, which we recognize hasn't been ideal, but it's something we're actually focused on rebuilding right now because we want to make it way more publisher friendly and more business manager friendly. And so the goal is, how do we solve the pain points for not only emerging artists, but the kinds of things we're bringing to market in the next year are going to evolve into really making it more business manager friendly, more established artist friendly.
Amazing. That's amazing. So, can you just tell us or share with us some of the artists that you work with on STEM? I mean, I know that you guys have blown up and that you are selective about the people that you work with. So if we could just kind of hear who your ideal talent is, that would be really great.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about what we look for when we work with artists. There's more of a description around the stage in which the artist is at in their business. So we're not for the DIY creator. And so if they're not making enough money from their music where paying other people is a real pain point, we may not be the best platform for them. There's many other services out there that are more catering to the DIY segment. So the first thing we look for is are you actually collaborating with other songwriters and producers who care to get paid because the money's really significant there. Mm-hmm. The second thing we look at, do you have a really good team around you? So one of our sweet spots is really around the emerging managers who are performing more label services on behalf of their clients. And we're seeing this segment grow continuously where managers are really acting like the labels for their clients and are providing those services, and they just need better tooling. And the thing that they don't really want to have to deal with is all the manual accounting and the royalty processing on behalf of those clients. So we're starting to really build out a lot more complexity around the different deal types they make, the different tracking they need, the automation of recoupment tracking and other things to sort of make all of that more fluid.
Great. I mean, you literally just touched a lot of the tools, but can you expand a little bit more on how this would help both the business managers and the managers, obviously, for tracking purposes? Because I know we've talked about the fact that you guys incorporate the splits process. I know that you have the contract management piece, the royalty tracking, which is, from my perspective, great from the bank's perspective and also from the business manager's perspective. So I personally feel like I know, but I would love for other people to know.
Yeah, I think our mission is pretty aligned with business managers, which I loved hearing about on earlier panels, how a lot of clients started paying attention to recorded music revenue this year and how they started really caring about where the revenue was coming, where it was missing, how they're being accounted to, what are the trends. And we all know that, the existing ecosystem and the existing tooling is pretty opaque, and the reporting delay is pretty painful. By the time you see the revenue statements, it's a little too late to do anything or to change strategy as it comes to releasing and rolling out a record. So for us, we want to, one, make it a lot easier for business managers to go in on behalf of their clients and make sure that the splits are put in accurately. We want it be super easy for them to export data out of STEM and move it into other systems that they're using, whether it's data faction or whatnot. But more importantly, what I imagine is happening a lot offline is the conversation around how much money is being spent, what are all the various expenses, collecting receipts or various items that need to be allocated towards specific projects so that the right recruitment amount is being tracked and things are paid out. Like, that's some of the stuff I'm sort of hinting to that we're going to start evolving into, but really trying to create the hub for the whole entire team around an artist to be able to drop all the information relevant to the recorded side of their business so that they can more easily streamline from there and understand the basic question that I think a lot of the people here listening today have to answer every day, which is, where's my money coming from and when am I going to get paid? And just the simple visibility into answering either of those, I hope, will make everyone's life easier. And more importantly, not just for your clients directly, but the people that they're responsible to.
Mm-hmm.
So eliminating some of that chasing, because I think chasing money sucks more than anything else.
Well, especially when you can make it all digital and streamline the process, which, as we know, is necessary, and you're definitely meeting that need. So that's amazing. But with that, I mean, obviously this past year has been a little bit of a challenge with live touring shut down. And so I thought, when you announced last year that you were launching Scale, I mean, I personally could not think that it was more perfect timing. I mean, you literally launched, I think it was in February 2020, right? So right before the hard part of the pandemic, or the initial part of the pandemic. And I know you've had enormous success with that. So do you mind just sharing with us a little bit about Scale? And
yeah, definitely. I don't know. We put together some visuals to sort of walk through the story if you guys want to pull that up. But yeah, I mean, we did not plan the timing at all. And, it's incredibly unfortunate what happened. But I think that our mission of what we were hoping to accomplish with Scale became a lot more valuable. If we want to go to the next slide, this is sort of a billboard. We launched Scale to really create an alternative to what we saw happening in the market, where artists, in order to access capital, had a couple of options, right? The big superstars can go to Bank of California, City National Bank, and access money for both personal and business needs. But in most cases, in order to grow business, artists were either selling their rights early on in their career and signing to a major label, taking massive cash advances without truly understanding the economics, or selling their catalog because they needed to access near-term liquidity or wanted to explore that. Like you guys were talking about with all of the massive activity that's happening with catalog sales. Mm-hmm. But in neither of those situations, they actually have the ability to understand how much money they were not only having to take out, but what they would have to pay back in order to break even. Mm-hmm. And just as an entrepreneur myself, I can't imagine raising capital for my business without seeing a pro forma and not only understanding the dilution of what I'm taking on when I take on capital, but more importantly, what it means for the future growth and what I'm giving up. Mm-hmm. And for us, we wanted to just provide our existing clients who we witnessed taking super predatory loans, technically sort of looking at it from the lens of it, in a different approach to it, a more sort of artist-friendly approach. And so what we did is we actually tried making it into something that was self-serve. Obviously, a lot of our clients come to us and we sort of work around custom deals, but at the very least, we built a product where we look at the average 6-month history of their earnings through STEM, and we give them an opportunity to really have an impact in making the decisions of the terms that they want. So they get to pick not only the cash amount of the advance that they want, but knowing that many artists want to have a flow through of their earnings going into their pocket, what amount they actually want to contribute to paying it down. And that dictates what we estimate the estimated payback duration to be. We show them very clearly the exact amount of dollars that they have to pay back as a fee, plus what the total amount is, so fee plus principal. And just displaying that information for artists in such a clear way helped educate them and make them more financially literate. And our goal is to get them to think about not only the cash on cash costs, but they really understand the cost of capital that they're taking on. So if we go to the next slide here, you guys talked about this earlier on in the panels about how so many deal structures have hidden costs and how many artists and managers don't really understand what the recoupable expenses are and how distribution fees are oftentimes baked into that. So we wanted to just make it more simplified than that. So the next slide after that is actually the one I think I want to talk about here is, we are on a flat fee structure. It's not an interest rate. And I think that confuses a lot of people. But I think most artists and management teams aren't understanding what the implicit fee is across the other deal types that exist. And so obviously we know that the typical major label deal with a 15% royalty is the least favorable. And by the way, I'm not saying major labels are bad. I think that they play a really important role in artist development. But from an economic perspective, you should only be giving up that amount of ownership if you really feel like you're taking on the right amount of services and all the attention is going to be going towards developing your vision and the execution towards your vision for your business. But on those terms, right, because you're only recouping out of your 15%, it's an effective fee of a loan for the money you're taking of 566%. And then once you break even, they continue to take 85% of your earnings. And even some of the more artist-friendly deals, which is like a 50-50 net profit share, where let's assume you're recouping out of the 50%, it's 100% fee. They're pocketing 50% along the way. So to break even on $1 million, you have to earn back 2, and then they continue to take 50% of future earnings as well.
After all direct costs.
Yeah, and so then we're sort of breaking down these terms for them, which, when you look at small business lending, I think the definition of predatory is anything that has like a fee of about 36% or higher. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of these terms by traditional sort of practices are not great and not favorable. And so we want to just switch the way people are thinking about this, because a lot of times they assume it's a free advance and it's not.
Yeah. I've seen so many times, and obviously the people that are joining today have seen this too, but of course you're very excited to get your first advance, especially when it's from, a major label, but they don't realize that, you essentially are paying out your commissions, then you have to pay out your taxes. And at the end of the day, you're really left with almost a quarter of that advance. But then when you think on the reverse side of that, the amount of money you have to make to then pay back that advance, that you're really become beholden to that label. And so I think this solution, and why I'm so glad you're here today to share this with us, is it's just an incredible solution for those artists that are independent. And like you, I agree that record labels, majors definitely have their place, independents definitely have their place, but this is a really incredible solution.
Thank you. And the exciting thing about what we're offering too is that we don't require necessarily any future catalog commitment. So in a world where artists were looking to access short-term liquidity for their existing catalog, we became a really good alternative because they could come and lease their catalog to us, get a 2 to 5 year advance on their revenue, and be able to continue to have the freedom to create new music with new partners if they needed to. Mm-hmm. So the real ethos of our model is, how do we simplify, how do we make things super simple, flexible, and clear, right? Those are the 3 guiding principles for everything we do.
So from an advanced perspective, what's kind of your standard structure? Do you guys have a time structure, a minimum and a maximum amount? What do you look at?
Yeah, if we want to go back to...
I love that the page that you're going to right before this.
Yeah,
you've made it super simple.
So we don't, our underwriting data is based on performance data that we look at. So whether you're an existing client that's distributed through STEM or you're distributed through other distributors where you're receiving cash flow, we actually don't require that you do distribute through STEM anymore. We can lend against any other catalog as long as they're fully recouped, right? So in most cases, it's other independent distributors. And we look at the history. We like to at least have a full years for new emerging artists. If it's older catalog, having 2 years history, that's great. And we look at a couple of different factors, but effectively we come up with an estimation of what your pipeline revenue would look like, assuming no new releases. And if you do want to commit new releases to it to increase your total amount, we have the flexibility to calculate that as well. And we have, being a distributor ourselves, we kind of understand how playlisting and editorial strategy can impact the growth of catalogs. So we can look at those factors as well. So based on that, we sort of give you a range, right? A 3x multiple to a 24x multiple. We can sometimes stretch beyond that. But you get to pick what amount you want, and then based on how quickly you pay back, the lower the fee is. And so we don't need to do anything other than just collateralize the revenue, which is really what our structure is. So for those of you who are familiar with like a merchant cash advance, that's the legal structure of the deal types. We don't need to do any personal guarantee. There's no personal credit history check. It's a simple revenue advance. And then, one you can go ahead, sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm sure you're gonna answer it.
Yeah, we try to make it super flexible, super friendly. Like I said, you have the option of not having to commit future releases. If you do, that's great. It can increase your pipeline based on your average income from previous releases. The other fun thing is if you're a shareholder as a producer on a track that's distributed through STEM, we can actually advance to you off of your receivables, getting that net share. And we've had a couple of big producers who are participating on some of our bigger clients' projects take the revenue that they're receiving, get a pipeline advance on it, and then use that money to develop new artists and are behaving more like the record label, signing new acts that they believe in and helping actually buy other artists out that they've worked with from deals that, you know, they have the access to by the catalog of, and are sort of building their business from there. So collateralizing one revenue stream and investing in another. We've also been surprised to see how many clients come to us to access money to be able to not only like get extra cash to put down towards a mortgage as the down payment, but actually buy a whole property with it. When to me that sounds crazy because interest rates are so low these days, but yet they like the experience with us because we can get money out the door in 4 or 5 business days from the date that you initiate interest to the date the money's funded in your account. So it's been really interesting because again, like we don't dictate the use of proceeds. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. And so from definitely on the mortgage side, from an all cash perspective, the offer is going to be far more competitive. Have you seen people that have done that actually try to pay back early? And if they do pay back early, do they pay a penalty for that, or how does that work?
No penalty. We give the option. We figured out initially we didn't think legally we could on the merchant credit advance structure, but then we realized we can. So we make that option available, but no one's requested to do that yet.
Yeah, that's great. I have to say, I love how you guys really have put the artist and the manager and the business manager in the driver's seat here in terms of dictating the advance and the structure. I mean, you really have made it simple for them to go on and see exactly what it is they're paying. I mean, it's similar to the way that we provide our amortization schedule. But at the end of the day, it's a very intensive process, and you've just simplified that. So that's incredible.
Thank you. I think we have one last slide at the end that we can sort of talk through sort of like what makes us different. And then we talked about it, like the rights to the masters are owned by the artist. We're just leasing them for the duration of the revenue that's outstanding. It's a flat one-time fee. You get to determine it depending on how much you're taking out and how quickly you're paying it back. You have true flexibility in terms of how you dictate the use of proceeds. But then again, like it's a much preferable tax structure because it's not like taxes income, or sorry, it's not taxes capital gains. So you pay taxes only as the income is actually earned, unlike other advances where if you get an advance from a major label, they tax it right away.
Mm-hmm. That's the big benefit of the loan. Or if you sell the rights, obviously you pay taxes on that as well. So this is a great way to retain ownership and capitalize off of it. Is there anything else that you are looking to venture into? I mean, obviously what you guys have done is incredible in such a short amount of time. So I'm just thinking like off the top of my head, there's obviously a lot of spark around NFTs and the, cryptocurrency and just are you blockchain? Are you looking to expand into that market at all?
Yeah, actually our roots in the genesis of the business, the first version of STEM was built on a platform called Color Coins, which is a blockchain platform. Mm-hmm. And we were very much inspired by the model of generating and facilitating consensus. What we learned is that we don't actually need the blockchain to do it. Mm-hmm. And doing so on chain actually creates a lot more complexity, especially when the revenue is coming through platforms that are off chain, right? So that means like Spotify and Apple are not reporting revenue in the blockchain. We'd be converting fiat into crypto only to reconvert it into fiat again, which is not an ideal experience. So for the time being, we're not really focused on that space. I think that there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to happen in order for it to be a more technically elegant solution, if that makes sense. However, we do have a ton of clients that are having NFT sales. We work with Blau, we work with Rack, we work with a bunch of electronic artists that have had tremendous success. So of course, they're coming to us because one of the things that I find really interesting is that despite the promise of Ethereum and a lot of the other consensus-based tokens that exist, they're not being used that way. So it's still one party that's receiving the money, and then either their business manager has to figure out how to account for it on an ongoing basis, or they're coming to platforms like us and saying, hey, help us. So it's something we're really, we're having product conversations about it as well right now.
Yeah, so I know I did not mention this at the beginning, and I should have. I'm sorry, everybody. But if you have any questions, feel free to ping us, and we can answer any other questions that you might have. From a question that I do have, actually, last question, is with regard to your amounts. Is there really a limit that you're comfortable with? What's kind of the maximum amount that you're willing to loan or advance a client?
Yeah. So we have a $100 million facility. So the max amount, we've looked at advances that are, as much as $5 to $20 million. Our smallest check size is a couple $1,000. So there's a lot of flexibility there. I think that, we prefer, depending on the size of the client, but like we've had clients who have come to us that qualify for advances that are as big as $5 to $20 million. And what we end up telling them is like, take it in tranches, because you'll end up paying it back sooner. And the way our model works is that you sort of start building credibility in the system. So we look at how your first advance performed, and that helps us underwrite the second advance so that it's actually more favorable. And so the behavior we're trying to instill in clients is to not take the largest check size right away and to take what they need and take it in increments, because that's when they end up paying the lower fees. So while we can do bigger check sizes, we prefer not to, because we just think it's less favorable to the artist. But if they want it, we can do it.
And that's perfect. I mean, the reason why I love what you do is because, similar to you, when we look at deals, generally we look at deals over $1 million just because the cost involved is too expensive. So having a solution obviously is great. Very similar to what you do. We take an assignment over the specific works. I know you don't actually take an assignment over it. We, if on the bank side, would take an assignment over it. So that's obviously a benefit of using scale. And yeah, the structure you guys have is just incredible. Matthew, do we have any questions that have come in?
I have a question just because it also came up earlier, was around, is my video frozen? Maybe it's just me, I don't know.
No,
was around upcoming potential tax changes and how you think that could impact the options that these folks are looking at.
I hope it makes us more profitable, right?
I think it will. Yeah.
I hope so. I think clients who are considering liquidity, and now that the capital gains impact is going to be not ideal for them, I think we'll hopefully come to look at options like ourselves and say, hey, I want short-term liquidity and I want to access capital because I want to do other things with it, whether it's put it into Dogecoin because Elon Musk is going on SNL. I can't believe I said that, but that actually happened recently. Like, people are like, I want to put money into Doge. Great. Or they can buy property with it, or they want to make investments in, the companies that are coming to them. So you guys obviously on the business management side are seeing a lot of deal flow from emerging companies that are offering equity. I think equity's fine if you're getting common shares. It's not great, but if you can also make a small investment alongside it to get preferred shares, like that's so much better, because companies early on may have really clean cap tables and really clean liquidity structures. But as they raise more money, not only do things get diluted, but also liquidity multiples start appearing in term sheets, and just the way that deals get structured get a lot more complicated. So it might be that your client may never actually see money, even though they have shares, because of the way that the cap table structure has changed over time. So
yeah, and from our perspective, we've obviously seen. With the possible increase in capital gains, obviously that's been proposed. when you look at potentially monetizing your catalog, if you're looking to sell it, obviously that would be a huge tax implication. That's right in many cases, but obviously the conversations that I've had with many of the business managers, we're looking just to leverage their catalog and essentially provide a liquidity source. And similar to, as Milana mentioned earlier, from a tax perspective, that's much more profitable.
Awesome. Thank you both. A lot to digest. I just dropped STEM's URL into the chat here so folks can go, but I would highly recommend also find these two on LinkedIn. Stephen himself is also a huge asset in the business management space, entertainment clients, just a wealth of knowledge. So thank you, Stephen, for also putting this together.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And thank you, Milana, for joining. I'm so glad you did. I think this is an incredible opportunity to introduce you to those people that aren't familiar with you guys. So that's wonderful.
I definitely appreciate it. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Milana. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. So we are going to go to another quick little break for about 15 minutes. And when we come back, we're going to talk. We have a really good panel with very large organizations. So we'll be talking with the MLC, CSAC, and Sound Exchange, moderated by Portia Sabin from Music Business Association. So go make yourself a sandwich. We'll be back at 12:40 Pacific or 3:40 Eastern. Thanks, everyone.